The scariest stories are the ones that are true.
1. This was pretty much when I decided that I couldn't work at the cemetery anymore. As I drive up to my usual spot, I notice a white car parked in the middle of the road at a diagonal, almost blocking the entire road. I parked behind it and thought it was weird, but maybe an elderly person was visiting early or something. I got out of my car and started walking up the hill to get to our office on the other side. On the hill there was a brick path with a railing. As I'm walking up on the brick path, it's really bright, but I can sort of see someone slouched on the path with their head down low, sort of leaning against the railing. Sometimes there are homeless people who sleep in the cemetery. I thought this was one of those situations, so I got off the path and walked on the grass, trying to avoid encountering the person. But as I got closer, I realized that there was something seriously wrong. I walked a bit closer and immediately knew this person wasn't alive. I didn't want to walk closer, but I could see it was a woman and she had a thin noose tied around her neck, and there was blood everywhere around her. The other weird part was that she was perfectly sitting, almost like she had been placed there or something. It could have just been a coincidence, I don't know. After that horrible viewing, we went back to the office and waited for the police to come. They came back half an hour later and told us they found a suicide note in the car I parked behind. They told us she was a former nurse and had recently lost her daughter. No one knew if the woman's daughter was buried nearby, or why she picked the spot she did. 2. I was sitting in the truck while my coworker went inside the office to finish documenting the service. The truck we used to drive was a real beater and completely filthy inside. Digging graves is pretty messy, and the truck was littered with dust and old Tim Hortons coffee cups. I'm sitting in the truck when an older gentleman comes up to the door and asks me a question about finding a grave. Pretty common question, as any cemetery is pretty much impossible to navigate without assistance. I go to respond, when all of a sudden an older lady opens the side door, jumps in and points her finger and yells, "That man kidnapped me, get me away from him. Don't let him ever touch me." I'm completely floored by this. She doesn't look out of sorts at all, completely normal, but she's in a complete f***ing panic. I look at the guy who all of a sudden walks away from me and looks totally shocked. He can barely talk, he's totally floored. Meanwhile the older lady is pleading with me to help her, repeating that she's been kidnapped. I try to calm her down, but she's completely losing it, and then she opens the truck door and runs towards my 2 other co-workers who are watering flowers about 500 meters away. I get out of the truck and ask the older guy what was the hell is going on, but he can barely talk. He mutters something that she might have Alzheimer's and it's tough taking care of her. I ask if we need to call an ambulance for her, or if she has medication, but he doesn't know what to do. I can see the older lady talking to my co-workers and she seems a bit more at ease with the distance between her and the guy. As I look back at the older guy by me, he begins walking back to his vehicle and says, "I'm sorry about this whole thing and I won't bother you again." He gets into his van and just drives away. He didn't try to run back to the older lady or anything. He just takes off. As I walk towards my other co-workers, I can see that the older lady is gone. They said that before they could help or call someone, she ran to the street, flagged down a random vehicle and got inside. Then the guy from before drives by in his van, smiles and nods at me like none of this just happened and slowly drives away from the cemetery. 3. In one of our mausoleums, some of the crypts, the hole in the wall the caskets go into, have enough space for caskets to go in one after another. For example, one casket will go in first, then the hole will get sealed and you can put the spouse or whoever wants to go in the same crypt, years later after opening it again. The only creepy story I've been told by a couple of our groundskeepers is this: people often put flowers in the crypt before it's sealed. They claim to have reopened a crypt from the 1990s years later to see the flowers still completely fresh, like new. Real, not fake flowers.